Director Wray, does the FBI have confidential human sources? Did the FBI have confidential human sources embedded within the January 6th protesters on January 6th of 2021?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people, no, we did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol?
Gentleman's time has expired.
You should not read anything into my decision not to share information.
Director Wray,
confidential human
gentleman's
sources.
time has expired. With that, I recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Katko, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased that the committee is holding this important hearing. I think it's vitally important to look at these issues on a routine basis, and we've always done that. As our nation faces these growing and continuous changing threats posed by foreign adversaries, criminal and terror organizations, and the crisis at the southwest border, to name a few. In the first 2 years of the Biden administration, we have seen a disturbing trend become a catastrophic humanitarian crisis at the border. In 2020, CBP had 500,000 migrant encounters at the southwest border. In 2021, the first year of the Biden administration and the pull magnets they created, these encounters have tripled to well over 1.7 million. And in the last fiscal year, Customs and Border Protection reported a record-breaking 2.3 million migrant encounters. Mr. Wray, I know you at FBI, that's got to be a concern for you. While the vast majority of these migrants may be coming to find work or more prosperous opportunities, we cannot ignore the evident security threat that looms beneath the surface of that crisis. CBP reported over 29,000 illegal immigrants who have known criminal records and 751 documented gang members, including 312 affiliated with the notorious MS-13 gang, were among those encountered at the southwest border. Those are the ones we know about, not the ones we don't. Even more troubling is that these numbers only count for those that were located by law enforcement, not the 600,000 that are estimated to have evaded officers at the border in 2022 alone. How many dangerous criminals and gang members entered undetected? How many were smuggling deadly drugs like fentanyl into our communities? The truth is we have no way of knowing, but these reports demonstrate it is almost certainly an elevated and fast-growing number. In addition, a still darker threat lies within the data, and something that's central to our mission here at Homeland Security. In 2020, CBP located three individuals, who were on a terror screening data set or watch list, attempting to enter the U.S. along the southwest border ports of entry. These were deemed to be a potential threat to our homeland, including known or suspected terrorists or their affiliates. In 2021, the number grew to 15. In the last reported year, 98 potential terrorists or affiliates were discovered between our ports of entry, attempting to evade law enforcement and enter the country. Again, that's just the ones we know about. Sadly, the increased risk to our nation's security is not the only consequence of this crisis. The migrants attempting passage are also experiencing brutal conditions that I saw firsthand, including child exploitation, rape, and death. The UN International Organization for Migration has labeled the southwest border as, quote, the deadliest land crossing in the world, end quote. And migrant deaths for 2022 are reported to be over 850, breaking the grim record for deaths set just last year. There are counties in Texas and in Arizona and California where they've had to cut their budgets to deal with the number of bodies they encounter on the border. I don't understand that. We are reminded of these tragedies almost daily with reports of families drowning in the Rio Grande River or dying of heat exhaustion crossing the inhospitable desert, often abandoned by smugglers who care only about profits. I would like to recognize the brave men and women who stand guard at our nation's borders, constantly under siege by drug cartels, human smugglers, and this ever-increasing humanitarian crisis. These honorable, brave Americans work day and night, holidays and weekends in some of the most unforgiving environments. And I know, Secretary Mayorkas, you know that for sure. They routinely face danger and even death, all while being villainized by some for fulfilling their duties to protect our homeland from those that wish us harm. In this difficult position, it is truly tragic but unsurprising that many of them bear scars, both mental and physical, from the burden that they shoulder. My heart goes out to the families of the heroic men and women that have given all protecting our country, as well as those that suffer the mental toll of prolonged exposure to this crisis, including the alarming rise in the number of suicides amongst these agents who are despondent. Another threat to our country illuminated by the Inspector General last year was a vetting shortfall experienced during the evacuation and resettlement of more than 79,000 Afghans as part of Operation Allies Refuge and Operation Allies Welcome. It has now become even ever clearer that the Biden administration facilitated the transfer and relocation into the U.S. of many Afghans that were known at the time to have potentially significant security concerns. Both Homeland Security and the Department of Defense IGs found that information used to vet evacuees was not complete, reliable, or always accurate. We understand it was a fire drill. We understand we had to protect those who helped us, but we have to do better with vetting refugees. And I'm a very strong supporter of having refugees coming into our country because I think they are properly vetted by and large. We must also not lose sight of the challenges to our virtual borders. State-sponsored cyber actors continue to utilize a cyber environment to penetrate computer networks for espionage, suppression campaigns, the spread of disinformation, and to steal intellectual property and technology to bolster their own defenses at the expense of industry, government, and everyday Americans. We must remain vigilant to the efforts of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, just name a few, who seek advantage in tactical capabilities in the virtual environment that bring risk to our security. In addition to state-sponsored adversaries, organized criminal cyber thieves devise formidable attacks and fraud schemes. Ransomware attacks were up 188% in 2021, costing businesses an estimated $1.2 billion, and were focused on schools and healthcare organizations primarily, including many in my district. I look forward to the collective insight of our witnesses today on how we can further address the most prevalent and concerning cyber threats impacting both our communities and national security. Additionally, along with many Americans, I'm sad to say that I'm very concerned about reporting that an FBI agent, Timothy Thibault, I said that correctly, may have suppressed derogatory information relevant to ongoing investigations relating to Hunter Biden, and has a long history of partisanship, and he was quickly left the agency when these allegations came to light. As a career law enforcement professional, I know I found these revelations to be deeply troubling, as did many others in law enforcement. Similarly, Mr. Wray, you have publicly acknowledged, and I applaud you for that you were troubled by the allegations at a recent Senate Judiciary hearing. While today's hearing is focused primarily on threats to the homeland security, I have to say I'm concerned about the overall state of the Bureau and the increasingly partisan perception, right or wrong, of the Bureau. And I say that from someone who for 20 years worked day and night on the highest and most violent and dangerous criminals in the world as a federal organized crime prosecutor in El Paso, Texas, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in upstate New York. And every time I had FBI agents by my side, they did the best wiretaps, they did the best organized crime cases. They were by far what I consider to be the A-team when he did those major cases. And I know those agents, because they're still friends of mine, are heartbroken by the perception of the FBI today. And I hope in the days and years going forward that you can turn that ship around, because our nation deserves it. And when our nation loses faith in law enforcement, that's a terrible thing. And you are the premier law enforcement agency, and I hope you can turn the ship around. Mr. Chairman, as you alluded to, this is in all likelihood my last full committee with this hearing. And of all the decisions I've had to make about whether to retire or not, this was the toughest one, by far, because I've had more joy and more satisfaction with this agency because it was like a bastion of bipartisanship. We don't conduct a lot of the antics and the cheap theatrics a lot of the other committees do. We get our job done because we care about this nation, whether we're a Republican or a Democrat. And we love our nation. We want to keep it safe. And I commend you for the time that you've been chairman and the way you've conducted yourself and the way we've become friends and the way we've been able to keep our eyes focused on the mission despite all the partisan rancor that seems to be higher than ever these days. So good for you for what you've done for this committee, and good for all of you members here who have put your partisanship aside when we come in this room and do what's right for this country. And that, to me, is a very important thing. We may often disagree, and sometimes even strongly, Mr. Chairman, but I believe this committee has demonstrated our passion for securing the country is bipartisan and steadfast. And I want to thank my committee staff, who have spent countless hours developing oversight legislation and policy to secure the United States from all manner of threats. I'm incredibly grateful for their service and dedication to the mission. Many of them are with me here today, and I'm not going to single them all out, but there's one I will single out. This person has been with me from the beginning. He's now my staff director. The entire 8 years I've been in Congress, I've worked with him side by side on Homeland Security matters, and it's Kyle Klein, who's right behind me. And I want to say thank you to him. He has been a true professional. He's a bipartisan person. He cares about this country and loves this country and wants to keep it safe. So Kyle, thank you very much, and I just want to say thank you to him. And with that happy note, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.